Hello, I'm Sam Hollis from Sam Hollis Web Design. Today I'm going to talk through some of the features of the Visual Divi Builder. So I'm going to talk you through a text box, which sounds very exciting, and take you through all the features and all the different things you can do with it. And what you'll find is 95% of those actually common to all the different options in all the different boxes in Divi. So if it's a image module, or if it's a video module, or if it's a blog module, most of the features are actually all the same. So I'm going to talk you through the features of a text module. Actually, it applies to most of the things in there, apply to nearly all modules. So it'll just show you what all the options are and what they can do for me, and what they can do for you and how you can use them. So I'm going to take you to one of my web pages where I've got the Divi builder open, and I've got it in editing mode, so we can see how it's a hover over sections, then they appear. So we're going to edit this section here. So here here you can see we've got a section, and you can click on the cog to get the details for that. Within the sections of blue. We've then here you can see we've got a row with some columns set in, and so when we hover over that, that's green, and then this is finally our text settings here. So we're going to look at these. So we're going to look at this text box on the left. The way it's set up already, it's got some setup already, obviously, and because it's in 3 columns and it's set up to be the same height, there are some changes we'll make to the system that won't always behave the same whatever you do, but I'm going to take you through all the options of the text box so you can see how it works. So if you click on here, sometimes you hover, sometimes you click, it depends which version of Divi you're on, and then you click the cog, that takes you through to the settings. Okay, the basic stuff we should know already. Here is we're in the text, here is the text. Okay, it's fairly easy. Here's the text editor, just like Word, and if I click on the highlight here on the more bold text, that is heading 2. That doesn't just talk about what the text looks like, which it does, but it also marks it up to Google as important text. And then this is paragraph text, so standard text, and you can see here we can change the alignment and all that sort of stuff. Really standard Word editing stuff there, so we'll leave that there. And we can add an image in here, but when we're using the Divi builder we tend not to. The link there, so module URL, so you can make obviously links within the text, but you can also make this entire box a link, and if you put a link in there, the entire box becomes a link. And all you change is in the same window or a new tab. So if you click on that tab and it's a link, does it open in a new tab or in the same one? We then get down to, if we can get out of that, in the same window, there we go. So there's link, so there's the text, there's link. So everything we click on, you can see it then opens up. So background. So we can see this has a white background, this text box. We can see that quite clearly, slightly transparent because we can see the hills behind it. So when we click on background, we've got 4 options here. That's color. This is like a 2 shaded color, so you can have 2 colors blending together. That is image, and this is video. So there is already a background color, but unfortunately it's white, so it's hard to see here because the background's white as well. But if we click on the cog, we can see the color code. We can see 255, 255, 255. That means it's the color code for white. And then the code afterwards is the transparency out of 1, so you can see it's not fully transparent. And we can play and we can change the color here, and you can see then if we could change the color at the bottom too. There's various ways you can change the color, but if we stick with that color, you can see now here that box is quite obvious. Let's move it back to white though, because that's quite nice. Or we could use here and do a gradient color like it says. So you pick 2 colors and you've got a lovely gradient there, so you can select the 2 colors, and there's options here with how the gradient looks and the direction of it and all sorts of things. You can play with that and make a lovely gradient. If you click on this one, you can add a background image. Click plus and choose an image from the image library, and you can add that in. I'm going to leave that because the image library is being a bit slow right now to load up, but you could choose an image and it could have an image in the background, or you can choose a video and pop a video in the background as well. That will slow your site down quite a lot. So yeah, videos look really nice, but be very careful with them because they will slow your site down if they're hosted on the site. You can add them in places from YouTube and stuff, and that's best wherever you can, but actually in backgrounds it tends not to let you, and you have to have the video on site, which is a bit slow, so I don't always recommend that. So yeah, that's the background. You've got those 4 options and you can choose which one you want to go to. So if I delete my gradient background, it'll go back to my white one. Okay. Um, so the admin label we can just leave for now. So that's everything in the content tab. There we see we've been through the text, link, background, admin label. So let's go to the design tab. And like I say, these are similar amongst most of the modules. So for the text, so this is the paragraph text it's talking about. There's all sorts of things we can change. So this means for regular text, and then all the settings are down here. You can also, for link text, change all the settings below, and the same for bullet points, numbers, and quotes and things. So you can change all sorts of things. So you can change the font, the weight, the style, whether it's italic or bold, change the color, text size. So we can play with all of these things. This is the main text there. You can see you can suddenly change its size. All sorts of options, text letter spacing. Oh, look, we can make that bigger. All sorts of options we can change. We can add shadow to the text. You can see that. If you can see that adding, it adds a bit of shadow, or turn that off. You can change the alignment of the text. All sorts of options we got. Okay. And yeah, say for all those different sorts of text. If we click on header text, very similar. Hang on, if we get to it, header text, very similar idea. So headers are either 1 to 6, 1 being the most important, 6 being the least. When you've clicked on a header, you can, same options we've just been through, you've got all of those options for all of the different types of header text. So you could in one text box have different headers, different text, and format them all differently. Sizing, let's go down. So you should be able to change the width of this box and the alignment, but because of the way I've set this one up, you can't particularly. But if it was on its own, you could change its width, and you could change, if it was on its own, whether it was centered or left and right here with the alignment. But because I've played with it a little bit, you can't. Before we get to the height, I'm just going to close this. So if I click red X, it discards, just because I made some pretty awful changes, just to show you how it works. And then I'm going to go back in with the cog, back to design, back to sizing, and yeah, we can change the height here. So suddenly the length of this has got longer, and we can make it longer or shorter. This is measured in pixels. Most of these boxes can do pixels or percent, because this is sort of could go on forever. There isn't really percent, but for lots of things like for width, you can choose pixels or percent. Percent is usually better because we're normally working with a dynamic screen that changes its width. And so if it's changed its width, if we fix something a particular size, that can cause all sorts of trouble. And there's a max height here as well. So that's the sizing. The spacing is to do with the spacing above the block and the spacing inside it. So the margin is the spacing above and to the side of the block, but because we've got 3 in a row and I've fixed something, you can't change that much. We can change the padding though, so that the padding is the gap between the edge of the block and where the content starts. So you can see I've got some padding, 30 pixels at the top and bottom and 15 pixels at the left and right. So let's say just show, you can see what happens if I make it 50 pixels on the left. You can see it's moved over to the left, but I'll put it back to what it was. Nice and simple. We can change the padding. The border, really easy. First of all, we've got, do you want rounded corners? So you can see here, if I put the numbers up, the corners get more rounded. Nice and simple. You can, they're all locked together. You can if you really want. I've no idea why you'd want to have some rounded and some not. If you wanted to do that, so I could make that top left corner square and the rest rounded, however I want to do it. Border here, we can add a border to the box and then change the border width. There we go. Or I might, if I put the border bit better, maybe just want the top border, and I can change the border width, and you can change the color and all of that stuff and the style. We can have a shadow around our box. There we go, lovely shadow. We can change all the settings, the shadow, the color and its position, and so on. There's some filters. Well, I don't know why you'd ever use these, but you can faff around, and I never found the saturation does much, but look, brightness we can change, and the contrast and stuff. I'm not quite sure how useful these are. We can make it sepia. There we go. So you can play with the filters. How useful they are, I don't know. Transform. This is much more useful. So this is to do with size, this first one. So we can actually make the box bigger than it should be. And that by itself maybe isn't that useful, because you could make it the right size to start with. This links to 2 sides together. So if I unlink them, I can stretch it sideways and not up and down. Let's make these back to 100. But what you can do, which I quite like with the sizing here, is If you click on the arrow, that's the hover button. So what you can do is make it bigger when you hover. So that, let's say we'll make that 130%, or let's link it together if it's 130% for both. Oh, they're different. We need to get them both back to 100 and then link them. So let's get them both back to 100. And then we'll try and link them. There we go, 102, that's clear. So we can make it a bit bigger on hover. So effectively, it stays that size. When you hover, it gets bigger. So that's quite a nice little effect. We can also have the next tab here is translate. So I'll usually unlock this one. You can actually move the block where you want. So that's useful if you want overlapping blocks. So that's quite hard to do normally, is how do you get two pieces of content on top of each other or near each other. So you can see I've just moved that over the title. And okay, that's not that pretty, but there are maybe instances. Maybe you want this to drop off the bottom of the picture slightly for effect. You could do that. Maybe you want those not in a row, but you can move things around like that, which is quite nice. We can rotate it again. This seems a bit of a gimmick to me, but we can rotate it. They're useful. And we can add some animation like fade and stuff, so it can fade in. So we can change the animation settings. I'm not really going to go into the advanced. There's nothing particular, I think, in terms of everyday stuff we need in there. But that's given you a quick tour of the text settings. Like I say, although it's text settings, most of these settings apply to most content blocks. So we've got the content ones and the design ones, and we've taken you through how those work and how you might want to use them. I hope that has been useful. If I want to save what I've done here, I click the tick. I'm going to save that, so I'll tick the cross. If you want to save what you've done, you also, as well as that, need to click those three dots and click save, and that will save it fully. Without that, you will lose it. And then you click on exit the visual builder, and it will leave that page. Yes, I've got unsaved changes, that's fine. So you'd save and exit if you want to keep them. I don't want to keep my changes, so that's fine. I hope that has been useful. It will show you how some of the settings work and how you can change some of the blocks within the Divi builder. I'm Sam Hollis from Sam Hollis Web Design.